I grew up where the Ohio runs black as a pupil at night and the hills fold in on Point Pleasant like cupped hands. People here can tell you 300 ways to die quick and 20 ways to keep your tomatoes from splitting, so I don't rattle easy. I bag groceries at castles after school, and I've pulled copperheads off porch rails with a broom. Fear is useful when it tells you where the edge is. Then last fall, something started moving the edge. The first time I saw him, yeah, him, because calling it feels like blasphemy, I was skateboarding past the flood wall, wheels click-clicking over the seams. It was late September, warm for the river, moon a dime behind a screen of cloud. I just popped up onto the levee when a shadow broke off from the mural of the Battle of Point Pleasant and glided over me. Not the wind, not a bat, wider. He stalled in the air like a parachute, then he was on the light pole. Tall, the kind of tall that makes you think of old farm silos. Legs not quite legs, wings slung tight around him like a cloak. And the eyes, more like coals, dull and red like breath through fabric. When they turned and locked on me, my knees forgot how to be knees. I dropped my board and ran, and yes, laugh if you want, but when I reached the Kroger parking lot, I hid behind a pallet of mums until the automatic doors hissed open and someone said, "Eli, what in God's name?" Like fear made me visible. That night, I told my mom I'd seen an owl the size of a Buick. She didn't look up from paying bills. "You need to slow down," she said. "You're always running." She meant grades, my mouth, my habit of arguing with anyone who assumed our town existed to sell Mothman figurines to tourists, red-eyed bobbleheads and fried wings on special. I didn't mention the eyes. The eyes felt like a secret I hadn't earned. You can say it's the stories you're told that make your world, not the ground you stand on. In Point Pleasant, you're told about the sightings in the 60s, pairs in a Chevy chased by a thing that could pace a car at 70, men in the TNT area hearing a low hum their bones understood and their brains refused, and then the bridge. Always the bridge. December 15th, 1967. The Silver Bridge went down during rush hour like it had been tired for years and finally said, "I'm done." 46 dead. The thing was spotted on the bridge beforehand, after around the edges of it like a storm. Everyone's uncle's cousin had a story. The lesson folks like my mom pulled out of that was simple. Some things want attention. Don't give it to them. I tried not to. I couldn't. The second time, I went looking. There's a place outside town where trees swallow concrete and the hills wear old government like bones. The TNT area, the old ammunition bunkers from World War II, concrete igloos stippled with moss, front doors blown off like yanked teeth. I rode my bike there after my shift, passing the sign that says the wildlife area closes at dusk. It was dusky in the way that says we're skipping pretty twilight and going straight to black. My flashlight cut a path through cotton grass and broken bottles. Every noise felt like it had hands in it. I found the bunker with the graffiti of a heart-pinned skull and went inside. It sounds ridiculous, walking into a concrete dome, hoping to find something that could fold me in half and drink my marrow. But I didn't go to find him. I went to find the feeling from the night he perched above me, the sense that something had me measured, and that if I stopped, the measuring would stop too. I wanted to know if the feeling would follow me in. Inside, the echo was a dog that wanted to play fetch with every breath. I whispered hello, and 10 hellos ran laps around the curve. Then my flashlight hit the back wall, and I saw stripes chipped into the concrete, 6 long, shallow grooves in a pattern like fingers, except too wide, angled in a V, as if a hand with no palm had been dragged down and left its bones behind. The grooves weren't new. They were old with new gouges on top, like someone or something kept renewing them. That's when I heard the hum. I felt it first, a silk thread pulling at the little bones in my ear. My flashlight shivered in my grip. I turned toward the door, and the light slid off a shape in the entry, a piece of night darker than the rest. The hum rose, thin and insistent, and the shape unfolded until the bunker had a ceiling again. Those red eyes, dim, then bright, then dim, like he was breathing through them. He stepped. Do you step when your legs are assumptions? And the beam of my light broke in half. "Okay," I heard myself say, because fear makes fools of us and politeness is county deep. "Okay, I see you." The hum quieted like I'd turned a knob. He tilted his head, not a bird head, not a man's, something in between, an aerodynamics of bone. I realized, stupidly proud, that I wasn't screaming. I took a step forward. He leaned back, those wide-folded wings brushing the concrete and making a sound like a sweater snagging on metal. The grooves. My flashlight flickered, complaining about the batteries. In that strobe moment, the red eyes flared. The hum returned, higher, the kind of sound that makes your teeth hurt. It wasn't aimed at me. It was everywhere. It felt like the bunker itself was making it. And then he was through the door and gone, a shadow unhooked. 3 more times I saw him. And if you're thinking obsession, you're right. Once on the roof of my school, black against a pale November sky, while frost made the football field sound like it was hushed by a librarian. Once on the new Silver Memorial Bridge in the middle of the night, clinging to the superstructure like a burr to a pant leg, body strange as origami, and when semis roared by, you could see the wind make him ripple. Once by the old power plant, where metal scraps ring bells under their own weight, and the river spits up everything it can't keep down. Each time that hum, more a pressure than a sound, and always, always, those scratches. On concrete, on rusted steel, even in dirt, the V-shaped scores repeated like a prayer. The 4th time, the truth came stalking. I'd called her because I needed someone who believed in patterns more than ghosts. Nora Starr was a senior like me, but took freshman year college classes at the Votech and welded better than most men twice our age. She wore her hair in a tight coil at the nape of her neck that made her look like she had secrets and was keeping them for good reason. "You said you weren't going to," she said when I told her over chili fries at Hillbilly Hot Dogs. "I know what I said." I told her. "You got a better hobby?" She sighed and tapped the table with one short nail. She'd nearly sliced the tip off that finger welding, and now it was flat and square, like a tiny shovel. "You want me to come protect you from a bird," she said. "That what we're doing?" I stopped. What did I think? Warning us? Playing accordion with our nerves? Practicing scales on concrete? "You think he's real," she said, like putting a stick on the ground between us. "Okay, then we treat him real." We met at the foot of the bridge at 2 in the morning, when even the bars forget their last drink. The river moved like the idea of a river. Fog came off it in sheets. We brought what you bring when you don't know what you're hunting. Rope, a first aid kit, a camera I borrowed from the yearbook staff, and Nora's brain. We walked the pedestrian path, steps hollow on the grating. Above us, the bridge's arch climbed into the fog and disappeared. We were in the rib cage of something sleeping. "There," Nora said, very soft and pointed. He was where the arch meets the vertical supports, a dark fold that wouldn't resolve into anything else. The eyes glowed, low, not surprised and not interested, more like watchful. The hum started, and the bridge answered. That's the only way I can say it. The hum met the steel and came back more itself. My skull felt too small. "Eli," Nora said, "look at the flange plates. Look at the metal." At the base of the support, the paint had bubbled and flaked, not from rust exactly. There were hairline cracks flowering out in spiderwebs. Running across the plates were the scratches, the V-marks, fanned in a repeating pattern, like someone showing you how to look. Here, 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 here. Each V pointed toward a line of stress, and where the V's met, the cracks were deepest. Nora was on her knees, fingers tracing the metal like a blind person reading a face. "These are stress risers," she whispered, reverent and terrified. "It's like somebody's drawing a map for idiots." The hum went up, like a siren you hear through 3 doors, and Mothman's red eyes flared. The bridge shuddered. I felt it under my feet, a shiver no one but steel should feel. "We have to get off," I shouted over the tiny high note that was burrowing into my molars. We ran. Behind us, the hum wove through the metal and came back larger, like a preacher's voice finding the one place in the church that makes it sing. We hit the end of the pedestrian path and didn't stop until we were down the embankment, hands in mud and grass. I turned in time to see him launch, something broken and beautiful peeling off steel and circling once over the arch. His wings, Lord, there was no measuring. They bent the fog. Nora was white-faced and grinning a little, the way test results make you grin when you were sure you'd failed. "He's not telling us," she said. "He's telling the bridge." "Telling it what?" "That it's tired." She squeezed her eyes shut and said one word, small and sharp, "Silver." The truth didn't come in a story. It came as a diagram and time to read it. For a week, we didn't sleep. We came back to the bridge every night with my camera and Nora's notebooks. We documented the scratches, we measured the cracks, we recorded the hum on my phone, though when we played it back later, there was only static and the occasional low note that made the speakers buzz like they wanted out. I checked the headline archive at the library, dusty clippings under plastic. The Silver Bridge collapse had a cause, some say, an eye-bar failure, a flaw smaller than a thumbnail in steel that carried too much of everything for too long. But the stories, the ones people kept telling anyway, said the thing with wings had been there, trying to decide whether to call a parade or a funeral. Nobody will listen, I told Nora after we took our notes to the county engineer's office and were told, very politely, to leave our imaginary concerns at the door. Nobody wants the old story. Then we don't tell it. Nora's braid was coming loose, dark hair filaments stuck to her face with sweat. We show them metal. We broke into the conversation the only way that works in a small town: church. The Sunday after we found the deepest crack, we sat in the back of First Baptist and waited until the last amen, and then Nora tugged Pastor Hicks's sleeve. He's a good man, half ruined by casseroles and people's pain. You need to go look at the bridge, she said, so simply it sounded like prayer. Don't look for a monster, look for the scratches. By evening, half the county had cell phone photos of flange plates and spiderweb cracks. A cousin who works with the state called someone whose voicemail is probably still recovering. Trucks came at dusk, because that's when things arrive here. Men in orange vests and white hats took measurements and frowned. We all stood there, our town in its one big clump, and pretended we weren't looking up. I was. He was there, perched dark on the superstructure, eyes dim like banked coals, wings held close. They closed the bridge at midnight, not because of a winged warning, but because the numbers said what the hum had been saying all along. They bolted braces. They scratched chalk. They whispered over clipboards the way you whisper to a sleeping baby. There was no collapse, only the slow, careful sigh of steel letting go of its bad ideas. Nothing dramatic, just bolts turned and plates reinforced. And you can thank our dumb human luck, or the persistence of one girl who loves metal more than myth. That should have been the end. We went back to the TNT area a week later. Just to see, Nora said, rolling up her sleeves. The night had that wet paper smell again. Frogs worrying the ditches, an owl asking the same question until it sounded like a dare. We stepped into the bunker with the scratches and stood with our backs to the humming wall. You think he's done? I asked. You saw his marks across 3 towns, she said. He's not a bridge inspector. The hum started, gentle as breathing under a blanket, and the eyes appeared at the entrance, the red of a distant taillight through fog. He unfolded himself into the bunker, and the hum settled like a weight distributed properly. The old V marks were there, renewed. Fresh chips littered the floor like fingernail clippings of concrete. I put my hand to the wall where the V's met. You point, I said, voice low. We look. Nora stepped closer than I did. She always did. She studied steel the way preachers study silence. It's a language, she whispered. 6 letters, all sharp. The hum rose. I felt it in my fillings, in the soft notch by my ear where a dog bit me when I was 9. My flashlight trembled. Dust lifted off the floor in a skin, floating and spinning in the beam. The winged shape moved, not toward me, toward her. Nora, I said. It's okay. She didn't look away. He's showing us where we break, remember? He wants... The sentence never got its verb. He crossed the space between them in a single fold of wings that made the air do a wrong thing. The hum spiked, sharp, clean, like a thin blade pushed into a tuning fork, and I flinched. His cloak of feathers wasn't feathers. Up close it was shadow that wanted to be solid. It wrapped, around her shoulders first, like a cape, then over her face. She didn't scream. She made a small surprise sound, the kind you make when a magnet jumps to something metal and you weren't ready. I lunged, because of course I did. My hand hit wing, not soft, not hard, nothing named, and slid off like I'd grabbed fog frozen into a shape. Cold flooded my fingers up to the wrist and then the elbow. I reached again. The hum slammed me into the wall without moving air, just pressure, like the room had clenched. The V-gouges pressed into my back. Nora, I shouted, and my voice came back 12 times, useless. Her eyes were visible for a heartbeat between black edges. They weren't afraid. They were intent, like she'd just solved a problem and was checking the math. Her mouth formed my name, and I swear I saw the corners tilt up, a welding mask grin she wore when a bead laid down just right. Then the wings closed. The creature moved backward, dragging darkness with it. It didn't hurry. It contracted into itself, a man-high shadow with too many lines, then pivoted and flowed through the doorway like night deciding to leave. The hum followed, a wire unspooling out into the trees. I stumbled after them, banging my shin on a chunk of old concrete, caught myself on a thorn bush that put 6 red mouths in my palm. Outside, the fields were the same fields. The stars were the same stars. The path was a narrow bruise through broom sedge. There were prints, hers, mine, then none. Overhead, something crossed the moon and made it shiver. I ran until the hum faded into frog song and my lungs burned. At the edge of the pond, the water lay flat as tin. I yelled her name until it wasn't a word anymore. I found nothing. No broken cattails, no scrape on concrete, no blood. Only the V-marks renewed on the bunker wall when I went back at dawn, as if the night had come with a chisel. The fresh gouges pointed toward the doorway, toward the sky, an arrow you could read no matter how dumb you were. The sheriff came because my mother called him. He searched the TNT area with 2 deputies and a drone. The drone found deer, heat-puddled in ovals, and a raccoon that looked up like it had a question. People talked. They said what people say. She ran away. She's hiding. You're making a story out of a girl who was tired of being the smartest person in the room. They watched me when I bagged groceries, waiting for the crack in my face where the truth would leak out. No one wanted the old story. No one wanted this one either. Pastor Hicks preached on Job that Sunday and did not look at me. The bridge stood, uncollapsed, the braces bright as new bones. Tourists took photos under the statue with the stainless steel wings. At night, my phone buzzed with messages that began, "You okay?" and ended in, "You seeing things?" Nora's textbooks sat in her locker until the custodian boxed them, label in thick marker, star N. I went back to the bunker every night for a month. I brought rope, a first aid kit, a camera, and all the useless words I could carry. I laid them out like offerings. I put my hand on the wall where the V's met until my palm buzzed and my fingers went numb. Sometimes the hum started, distant at first, then nearer, the room pulsing like a throat swallowing. Sometimes the eyes appeared, red behind fog. He never came in again. He never brought her back. On the 15th night, I found a new pattern under the old. Not Vrace this time. Lines crossed into a shape like a jagged star, same 6 angles, deeper in the center, faint toward the points. I traced it and understood nothing, which felt like the right amount of understanding. I pressed my ear to the wall and heard a sound like wind through a metal harp buried in dirt. I don't think he's kind. I don't think he's cruel. I think we mistook a compass for a friend. We thought a red light on a dashboard meant a mechanic would appear and fix us for free. Maybe he does help sometimes when the metal listens. Maybe sometimes he needs something the way bridges need bolts, someone who can hear the hum and answer back. And maybe once he finds that someone, you don't get to vote on what happens next. Sometimes I drive the loop at midnight, the levee and the warehouse roofs and the parking lot by the flood wall. I see him once in a while, perched on a light pole, balanced on the arch of the bridge like something constructed for that curve alone. In the glass of my windshield, the red eyes look closer than they are. I don't run anymore. If anything, I slow down. I roll the window down and listen for the hum in the seams of the town, the places where things carry too much of everything for too long. I listen because I owe him. I listen because I owe her more. When the sound comes, thin as a wire, I follow it as far as it goes. I put my hand to the cold concrete where the marks repeat, and I whisper the only promise I can make. I'm still here. I'm still looking. If you point, I'll look. The truth isn't kind. It isn't safe. It's sharp as a scratch in concrete, simple as a V repeated until the right person sees the arrow, and sometimes the arrow points away from you. Sometimes it points into the sky and does not point back. People ask where Nora went, like it's a place I could put on a map. I tell them the last true thing I know. The night took her. It had wings, it hummed, and it did not look back.